Major John Pelham. Now this morning we're very fortunate to have with us Major Pelham.
Sir.
Major Pelham is going to tell us a little bit about himself. If you would pay attention, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is John Pelham. I was born September 7th, 1838 in the Cane Creek community of Alexandria, Alabama. I was third of 8 children, born to my parents Martha and William Pelham on their family's 1,000-acre plantation. During my childhood, I was a rather adventurous boy. One time, I was riding our neighbor's milk cow, and unfortunately, I rode it till it ran dry. And I was scolded to only ride bulls in the future if I was feeling rather adventurous. Education, I received some at the local school, but mainly at home. In the year 1856, at the request of our local congressman, and thanks to my uncle, I successfully enrolled at West Point Military Academy in 1856. At the academy, I excelled in athletics, ranked highest in cavalry tactics, and was rather popular amongst my fellow cadets. But I had 2 rather interesting experiences. I was kicked in the leg by a horse, needing to receive medical attention, and on another time I had 2 teeth pulled and 3 filed, all on the same day without any type of pain reliever. But in my studies, I came across this book titled Cavalry, Its History and Tactics, written by a British officer named Nolan. I would find this information later on to become of great value. See, during this time, their states wanted to secede from the Union, and rumors of war between the states due to the overstep into constitutional rights and state rights from federal government. See, this caused a great dilemma on my hands. Graduation was set in the spring of 1861, and I was determined to receive my diploma. I regretted the circumstances which made it necessary, but I didn't see any remedy. Alabama seemed determined to leave the Union before the middle of January, and I thought it would be dishonorable of me to withhold my services when they will be needed most. It seemed pretty hard to have toiled for 4.5 years for a diploma, then have to leave without it. January of 1861, Alabama seceded from the Union. I then wrote to the Confederacy's new president, Jefferson Davis, inquiring on the very subject if I should stay at West Point to receive my diploma or resign and come back home to Alabama in order to receive a commission with the cavalry in the Confederate States military. Unfortunately, I received no response. But then I received word that I had been appointed First Lieutenant of the Confederate States military without my consent or knowledge. See, I was determined to receive my diploma until Secretary of War Simon Cameron put his hand to the pen after the bombardment at Fort Sumter, April 12, 1861, commencing war between the states. The following day, he directed that all West Point cadets were to reaffirm their oath of allegiance to the United States of America. But as for me and my good Texan friend Thomas Rouser, we refused, and we submitted our resignations and began our long journey back home to Alabama. Immediately upon arrival, back in the Alexandria Cane Creek community, we began to drill the new recruits, our friends and our family. We were Company D, more commonly referred to as the Alexandria Rifles of the Alabama 10th Regiment. We then parted and made our way to Jacksonville around the old courthouse on the square to say our farewells to our friends and our family, not knowing when and if we'll see them again. We made our way to the Confederacy's new capital in Montgomery. Although I desired a commission with the cavalry, they had other means for me as an officer over arms and munitions in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I was stationed. From there, I was called upon by General Joseph E. Johnson to accompany him to Lynchburg, or to Harper's Ferry, Virginia, to help train the new recruits into artillerymen. I and the Arbutus Battery, in the spring of 1861, then accompanied General Joseph E. Johnson and General Thomas Stonewall Jackson to Manassas, Virginia. The battery and I played a key role in the defeat of the Union forces at this first major battle of the war between the states. In the summer and the fall of 1861, I was promoted to captain, so I could organize my own mobile horse artillery unit underneath the direct command of General Jeb Stuart. And by the summer of 1862, I was promoted to Major of General Jeb Stuart's Mobile Horse Artillery Unit. I fought in every major military engagement of General Jeb Stuart's Mobile Horse Artillery Unit of the Army of Northern Virginia, from the Battle of Bull Run all the way to Kelly's Ford, Virginia. But let me tell you, my most memorable engagement with the enemy was in Fredericksburg in December of 1862. My men and I, with merely one cannon, successfully stalled the entire Union Army's advancement for nearly 2.5 hours, thus giving the Confederate main line enough time to entrench and repel several vicious attacks from the Union. I was referred to in a newspaper out of Tennessee as the gallant Pelham. But let me tell you about war in a letter that I wrote to a relative of mine after the Battle of Bull Run. I've seen what romancers call glorious war. I've seen it in all its phases. I've heard the booming of cannon and the more deadly rattle of musketry at a distance. I've seen it all nearby and been under its destructive showers. I've seen men and horses fall thick and flat around me. I've seen our own men bloody and frightened and flying before the enemy. I've seen our own men bravely charge the enemy's lines and heard the shout of triumph as they carried their position. I've heard the agonizing shrieks, the wounded and dying. I've passed over the battlefield, and I've seen the mangled forms of men and horses in frightful abundance. Men without heads, without arms, and others without legs. All this I have witnessed and more, until my heart sickens. And war is not glorious as novelists would have us believe. It is only when we are in the heat and the flush of the battle that becomes fascinating and interesting. It is only then that we enjoy it. When we forget ourselves and revel in the destruction we are dealing around us, I'm now ashamed of those feelings I had in those hours of danger. The whistling bullets and shells were music to me. I gloried in it. It delighted and fascinated me. I feared not death in any form. But when the battle was won and I visited the field, a change came over me. I see the horrors of war, but it was necessary. We are battling for our rights and our homes. Ours is a just war, a holy cause. The invader must meet the fate that he deserves, and we must meet him as becomes us, as becomes men. As President Davis said several months ago, a small mound of earth marks the place where the invader fell. March 17th, 1863, Kelly's Ford, Virginia. My men were stationed at the upper portion of the Rappahannock while I was in Culpeper, Virginia, a few miles off. I received word of a surprise Union attack on my cavalry forces. I found and borrowed a horse and rode out to the aid of my men. After crossing the Rappahannock by bridge, a Union artillery shell exploded nearby, embedding its fragments into the back of my skull. I tumbled from my horse, being thought for dead. After the battle, my men recovered me and found that I was unconscious. I was not dead, and brought me to Culpeper, Virginia, where the doctors there worked on me vigorously for hours into the early morning of the next day, to no avail. I have passed on in the early morning, March 18th, 1863, as Major John Pelham of General Jeb Stuart's Mobile Horse Artillery Unit of the Army of Northern Virginia at age 24. Sorrow swelled in the Confederacy. General Jeb Stuart said of my death that it was an irreparable loss to the Confederacy, and General Lee referred to me as the gallant Pelham. My mortal remains then being transported by train, stopped and made several visitations from Virginia to Alabama. General Lee also appointed several men to accompany the mortal remains, one of which was Charles Bush, a childhood friend of mine, a black man. He not only was in the Confederacy, but he took it upon himself to find the saddlebags, pistol that belonged to me, and successfully returned it back home to my family. My funeral was set March 31st of 1863 in Jacksonville, Alabama. It was a bright sunny spring day and the largest gathering of people ever before seen in Jacksonville as the Jacksonville Republican newspaper said, had attendance at the graveside. My friends, my family, neighbors, teachers and students from both the male and female academy, CSA officers, and the Calhoun County Grand Jury. As they lowered my mortal remains into their final resting place, the school children filled my grave with white lilac blossoms. Upon my headstone at the grave, you'll see these words say, "How shall we rank thee upon glory's page, than more than soldier?" Thank you.
Formation. Shoulders. Arms. Formation. At extreme elevation. Ready. Take aim. Fire! Formation. Reload.
Because it could be, he just got to him before he could reload it.
Formation. At extreme elevation. Ready! Take aim! Fire! Formation. Reload. Formation. At extreme elevation. Ready! Take aim! Up! Formation. Present arms!
There you go.
Formation. Reload! Formation. Order. Arms. Rest in place.